'Tis I, Tantus Naravan Dracovin, Lord and Emperor of the Dracovin Empire, and welcome. It is time for Gathering the Roll, the only news program supported by the Empire. Exciting and fantastic news from the worlds of Magic the Gathering and role-playing games such as Dungeons & Dragons, Shadowrun, and Pathfinder. Let's talk about some Magic Gathering news to start off. It's a great week for tournaments, a big one that's going on. There are going to be 4 major kind of groups of tournaments going on. In the Grand Prix, there are 2 tournaments going on. There's the Grand Prix Denver in Colorado, USA, and the Grand Prix Madrid in Spain. So if you are participating or want to participate in any of those, I would look into it now. It might already be closed up. The Regional Pro Tour qualifiers for Aether Revolt are also going on over this weekend. It's going to be a modern constructed tournament that the top 4 winners within it are going to be getting invites and airfare to the Pro Tour Aether Revolt when it begins next year. So if you want to be able to get in it, go to one of the participating locations listed on the link I put in the description below, and you'll be able to participate, hopefully win, and maybe get your invite in airfare to an interesting tournament coming up next year. Last tournament I want to talk about, of course, is the Star City Games Atlanta Invitational. Now, this one is exciting because not only do you win some prize money by participating, you also get into the Magic Pro Tour when it begins next year, that they give you an invite to it. So it's yet another way that you can get into the Pro Tour next year. Let's move on to D&D news because there's some new Druid circles out in Unearthed Arcana and a little bit of extra optional rules on wild shaping. So more Unearthed Arcana this week. It's been exciting that they're putting out a whole bunch of it week after week. Let's enjoy it while we can. There's the Circle of Dreams, which has to do with the Druid has connections with the Fae and the Feywild. The Circle of the Shepherd, where the Druid has connection with the spirits of the beasts. The Circle of Twilight, which they have to deal with the kind of natural balances between life and death and a dislike of undead. All of these circles have very interesting abilities. I'd check them out if you want to look into any of them for your druid or for your game. There's also some optional rules on wild shaping. These optional rules allow you to not only begin with a certain number of beasts that you have knowledge of how to transform into, rather than a sort of a little more open-ended, but then it gives you better options that later on you can learn more new beast forms, that you can encounter things that would normally be outside of your CR range and possibly learn how to transform into them by the nature of you studying them. So it is a very interesting take on wild shaping that is a little more organic, that perhaps you learned a few to begin with and you learn more as you would explore and adventure in a game. Let's move on to some Shadowrun news, because there's both a Shadowrun Legends out and a Shadowrun Mission. Let's talk about the Shadowrun Mission. The Shadowrun Mission is called Deck Job. This is all about you going into the quarantine zone within Chicago and looking for a experimental cyber deck that was stolen. So already it's kind of a tough mission going into the quarantine zone, but now there's also going to be other various complications that will mess with your runners along the way and make it a very interesting, twisty-turny kind of story. Check it out if you want to run this. In Shadowrun Legends news, another book is of course out this week. Tales You Lose is a story. It's all about a runner who gets branded as a traitor within the group that she was working with, and she finds out that the reason why is that the person that stole something from this group, her group, looked exactly like her. She finds this person who seems to be an almost exact clone of her, except with some kind of mystical support behind her back. The entire novel will deal with her learning about who this person really is and what's really going on, and perhaps clearing her name along the way. A classic kind of storyline. So that's it for the news for this week. Links to any of these stories will, of course, be in the description below. If you want to join us for a greater discussion on it, we will be having, yet again this week, discussing Tabletop at 1 p.m. on Saturday at www.twitch.tv/TantusandDracovin. That's all one word. You can join us there, join us in chat, ask any questions about this, as we'll talk about many of these stories in the upcoming week. Remember to like, subscribe, and of course share the news. If you want to show some extra support for the channel, you can always check out my Patreon, linked in the description below. If you have any questions, comments, anything you want to say about any of these news stories that you want to just ask me directly, please just leave it in the comments below. Anything that's short and quick, longer discussion questions, please take it over to Discussing Tabletop, or just let me know that you want us to talk about it there. We'll discuss it in the episode, and you can then watch it when that VOD goes up next week. So until the next time, I bid you farewell.